Hello and welcome to HateWatchers. Today we're starting our weekly coverage of Season 2 of Andor with episodes 1 through 3, entitled 1 Year Later, Sigrona Tima, and Harvest, respectively. Now before we start, thanks to Andor releasing 3 episodes each week, I have to stick to a higher level of focus when doing the breakdowns in order to get these videos out before the next episodes air. More of a 30,000 foot view of the episode's storylines. So the breakdowns aren't quite going to get the usual HateWatchers treatment scene by scene. Now, let's punch it right into the breakdown. Spoilers ahead. Episode 1 starts with Andor trying to steal an experimental Imperial starfighter. First he shoots a droid because it's black, then he clumsily slams the fighter into every inch of the hangar like he's in a Whole Foods parking lot, but he eventually escapes. Over on Chandrila, Mon Mothma's daughter shows off her Disney princess dress as everyone prepares for her wedding. And Luthen shows up so he and Mon can have little conversations about how cool it is to be spies working for the rebellion. Then we head over to Space Kansas, where the Ferrix refugees are living in a galactic double-wide. And they're nervous because they're undocumented farmhands. How topical. Cassian takes the stolen fighter to this unnamed planet, but his contact is missing and he walks into a trap. Even though these guys are also rebels, he spends the rest of the next 2 episodes as these dipshits captive as they argue over how to escape the planet, eventually leading them to fracture into 2 groups as they trade barbs and blaster bolts. Off in the Mouthing Divide, Director Krennic is showing other Imperials, Miss Stick-Up-Her-Butt Deidre included, a PSA about space spiders. But it serves a purpose as he introduces them all to a secret plan regarding mining operations on Gorman. Something that'll become relevant as this series works its way toward the, spoiler, Gorman Massacre. Back over in the trailer park, the Imperials arrive to audit the planet's grain production as we white-knuckle our way through vicious Rebel Moon flashbacks. Back at the wedding, Mike Pence here is drunk, telling Mon Mothma that his wife just left him, and asking how her marriage is doing as he eyes her up and down. And her daughter is upset because her husband-to-be won't hold her hand. But that's bound to happen when you marry off literal children. And back with Cassian, the insults have turned into blaster bolts as the episode comes to an end. In episode 2, Deidre says she doesn't want the Gorman project, but her old lesbian superior informs her she'll be accepting the project and will be enjoying it. On Chandrila, Luthen's assistant is concerned she hasn't heard from Cassian and needs to get home, but more likely she just doesn't want to spend 3 episodes on this wedding like the rest of us will. And Mon Mothma's husband isn't as stupid as his hair, as he catches on that she's doing something inappropriate with Mike Pence. Then we catch back up with Cyril Karn as he's onboarding a new intern at Initech. Meanwhile, on Space Kansas, an Imperial officer asks Bix out to dinner, pretty aggressively. And then we see that Deidre and Cyril are living together now. We head back to the wedding because we can't spend more than a minute in any given location, and here Mike Pence wants compensation for the aid he's rendered Mon Mothma, and she's barely able to hide her "I have to kill you now" face. Meanwhile, Luthen's assistant is back on Coruscant so she can train to become a DJ. The fractured rebel gang tries to settle their differences with rock, paper, scissors, and Andor manages to escape, showing us that he was on Yavin 4 this whole time, and the episode comes to an end. In episode 3, Mon Mothma tells her daughter that her mother was a drunk, and then she tries to talk her daughter out of the wedding. But she's undeterred, and the weird ceremony proceeds, complete with choreographed steps and stealing of the maiden's hair. Luthen's assistant makes contact with Andor, who's floating helplessly in space, and she's not much help, so he hangs up on her. Meanwhile, Cyril, Deidre, and Cyril's mom eat fondue. After the ceremony, Mike Pence is drunk again, and Luthen thinks he's crossed a line and he tells Mon Mothma that he needs to die. But not before the party starts. On Kansas, the Imperials begin their crackdown, and this officer doesn't care about Bix's immigration status, only her body. But she makes it clear that no means you're getting a hammer to the face, and he dies. At the wedding, Mon Mothma's spy sister notices that her secret agent lesbian lover, Cinta, is moonlighting as Mike Pence's driver. Meanwhile, Mon Mothma is just living her best life. And Cinta drives the drunken old horn dog off toward an unfortunate accident. Back on Kansas, Cassian flies in with the stolen fighter, takes out the Imperials, finds that Brasso was killed, and he packs everyone else up to leave as the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if these episodes were Great Watches or Hate Watches. I thought these episodes were good, so they get the Great Watch label. but they're more solidly in the good category, despite what my sardonic recap might lead you to believe. I had my issues with them that I'll talk about in a bit, but they were still more good than bad. That being said, I don't think Season 2 is going to change anyone's mind about Andor. But again, we'll get into that. Now to start off with, let's talk about the release structure Andor is following. Back when the second and final season was announced, we knew that the first season would cover a year of time in the galaxy far, far away, and the second season would cover 4 years of time, right up to the events of Rogue One. So by releasing 3 episodes a week over the next 4 weeks, each 3-episode arc will cover a year's time. And while it creates a lot more work for someone like me in covering 3 episodes a week, it makes a lot of sense from a narrative perspective. Plus, it will keep each year of time in-universe contained in these 3-episode batches, which allows them to start and finish the arcs all of the different storylines present each week. And oftentimes, the 3 episodes individually aren't very good if viewed in a silo, and you need to watch all 3 of them to appreciate the full story. So I get it. This week's episodes were each somewhere around 50 minutes long, about 10 minutes longer than I anticipated. But they were able to keep up a pretty decent pace, and it didn't feel like it was dragging very often, at least in terms of their pacing. The subject matter, though, was not the most captivating experience, I'll say. Episodes 1 through 3 covered 4 major storylines: Cassian's misadventures in bringing back this experimental starfighter, the wedding on Chandrila, the Ferrix refugees on Space Kansas, and what Dedra and the rest of the Imperials are doing. And if I'm being honest, none of these storylines really grabbed me. I take interest in some of it as a Star Wars fan, but even then it's not overly interesting subject matter. I don't want to spend 3 episodes on a wedding that's just the backdrop for hushed conversations. I don't need to spend 3 episodes on a farm waiting for a conflict to come to a head. I'm not going to set an alarm so I don't miss Dedra having dinner with her mother-in-law. I liked the early part of Andor's story, blasting out of an Imperial facility and stealing an experimental spacecraft. But even that story got bogged down on Yavin 4 as these dimwits fought with each other. These episodes still offered some of the level of intrigue and spycraft that Season 1 offered, but it's not the kind of television that'll grab most people and force them to sit and watch. So I can understand someone watching this and feeling like it was slow, even if it was well-paced. Though, it's early, and while the storylines covered in this first batch of episodes were not overly serious or heavy or consequential, I think they're just setting the table. And eventually all of these storylines will slowly build toward an explosive payoff at the end like the first season did. But that being said, if you're going to try and draw someone into this show, these would not be the episodes I'd show them. Now, compounding the issue in these 3 episodes, I think Andor has a tendency to be a bit over-indulgent in its storytelling, a complaint I levied against the first season as well. They often roll out 3 episodes covering stories that could be better handled in 1. They're dedicated to fleshing out their stories and building tension, which I can appreciate, but the payoff is not always worth it, and I think these 3 episodes are an example of that. And to top it all off, Andor in Season 2 doesn't feel any more like Star Wars than the first season did. I'm a Star Wars fan, and I think the galaxy far, far away is plenty big for all kinds of storytelling. But I'm not the one you have to convince. Casual Star Wars fans have certain expectations about the characters involved, the themes, the subject matter, the scope of the conflict, the presence of the Force. And Andor mostly shirks these things that people expect, leaving a lot of people feeling like Andor simply isn't Star Wars. Since the beginning, the show has had an undeniable lived-in feeling, often honing in on that slice-of-life experience in the Star Wars galaxy. But that minutia is not what many outsiders expect from the franchise. So needless to say, Andor Season 2, so far, does not look to be deviating from that approach. I think that Star Wars feeling will build as the season goes on though, at least to a degree as the scope of this story widens. Also, it's a minor gripe, but I think these episodes took the jumping back and forth between storylines too far. At times it felt spastic, hopping over to Andor so the jabronis holding him captive could sling some insults, then jumping to Space Kansas so the refugees could express their concern about Andor being late. Then back to Andor for a few more barbs, then back to concerned faces. I don't think it came off as well as the creators envisioned it would. Now on the positive side, Andor looks phenomenal. The show, not the man.
She said you were cute.
This is some of the best looking Star Wars we've ever gotten. Again, if you can call it Star Wars. But the show truly looks like a professional production, especially when put alongside something like The Acolyte, which looked like an amateur production, largely because it was an amateur production. And it should look great after all, considering that Andor's 2 seasons in total have run up their costs to $645 million. The second season alone costed $290 million, which was more than The Last Jedi's budget. So I won't argue that this show is worth that investment, but at least the budget seems to be making its way on screen for once. The writing, the dialogue, the acting, it's all on another level from the other Star Wars shows we've gotten, and it all feels like an adult approach to storytelling in this universe. But maybe to a fault, because there was a controversial scene in these 3 episodes you probably heard about before the season started. In episode 3, there was an attempted sexual assault by an Imperial officer against Bix. And this has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, as they think this kind of thing doesn't belong in this franchise. In general, they view Star Wars as an escape that doesn't need to include heavier topics like that. And I tend to lean toward that side of things. Andor kind of straddles the line for me. I'm all for adding more adult topics to Star Wars. I don't think this has to be entirely kid-oriented or kid-friendly, but I don't think this is the right way to make it adult-oriented. It just brought about a visceral feeling that the scene was out of place in Star Wars. I don't think it should be a massive controversy. I don't think it should disqualify people from watching the show, but I don't think the scene was necessary either. It's not like we needed more evidence that the Empire was bad. Oppressing and massacring people is enough, believe it or not. But I'm interested to see where the Star Wars is for kids crowd comes in on this. Also, I should note that the scene did not go as far as the leaks said it did. Tying up loose ends here before I stop rambling, you might be able to just straight up skip some of the less important episodes of Andor because it looks like each episode will spend a full 2 minutes recapping the last one. In fact, I'm sure by the end of the season, someone could put out a guide of which episodes you can just flat out skip without missing much. And in that same vein, it does kind of feel like this second season will be a better experience just binging it all at once. Also, there are quite a few nuggets of deep lore for Star Wars fans to dig up. They're well integrated into the show. It's never too obvious of a head nod. And it's just flavor. It's never anything real consequential that non-Star Wars fans will miss out on. And lastly, I did like seeing director Krennic back from Rogue One. Overall, I think this was a decent start to this season, but it's not going to change anyone's mind about the show. It still struggles to feel like true Star Wars. And I don't think this start is going to grab people's attention and draw them into the show on its own, but I do think it will improve as the season goes on. Did you tune in for the second season of Andor? If so, what did you think about it? Were you hoping it would feel more like Star Wars out of the gate? Do you think subjects like sexual assault belong in Star Wars? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to like the video if you liked it and subscribe to HateWatchers to stay up to date on Andor. Thank you for thinking we're not in Space Kansas anymore with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.